to take some notes. I'm going to share these notes with you on the screen, but I'm also going to send them through to John as well, the PowerPoint through to John, so that you've got,
awesome.
It'll be good for you. I'll be saying a fair amount of stuff to do with mastering your marriage. But when we're talking, if you can write down all of your thoughts that you have, and there is, I don't know if you've been used to doing this, maybe John, you can speak into this. There is a chat at the bottom of your screen, where you can leave comments and notes. And what I'm keen for everybody to do is to, if there's a question, if there's a thought, if there's an observation, or if there's even a disagreement, I don't mind. This would be more of a conversation more than a preach. Definitely a conversation more than a preach. And this is not a lecture. This is a chat amongst us men, just to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to mastering your marriage. So why don't you test writing into that little chat and just say hi, tell me where you're from, tell me a quick thing, if you're married, if you're not married, and I'll see if I can share my screen with you right now, and we'll go from here. Hang on one second, let me open this, share this, click that. It's all technical stuff, isn't it? You should be able to see my screen now. Thumbs up if you can see it. Yeah? Great. Here we go. Right. There we are. And even if on the top side of your Zoom, you can click on speaker view, and then you only get to see my face or the person who's talking, and you don't have to look at everybody else's face if you don't want to, or if it's taking too much of your screen up. All right. Good to see you, Nick. Good to see you, Nick. Okay, so mastering your marriage. So my name's Terry Scott. I'm a pastor at Hillsong Church. That's who I am. That's my story. You've known a little bit about who I am now. Married, 24 years, two kids, 18 and 21. And the best thing about being married is that you get to actually be friends with your partner that you've decided to spend the rest of your life with. What we'll talk about today is the 3 reasons why marriages can end in separation or divorce. And we'll talk about some reasons or some antidotes, how you can stop that from happening to you. Before we get into that, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some basics when it comes to mastering your marriage, mastering your relationship. So if I say the word married and you're not married, you can swap it out for relationship. Or if you're not in a relationship with a girl, then you can swap it out for a relationship with your boss, with your friend, with whoever you want. So tailor what I say into the relationship that you have. But obviously I'm predominantly talking about mastering your marriage. All right. So mastering your marriage. First question, write in the chat, what's the worst or best advice you've ever been given when it comes to your marriage? What's the best or the worst advice you've ever been given when it comes to your marriage? I'm sure you've been given lots of great advice. So type that in the chat as we're talking. I'm sure you've been given great advice when you comes to being married. Maybe your parents gave you some advice when it came to being married. Maybe your friends told you some do's or don'ts when it came to being married. Howard says the best advice was to listen. That's good advice. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so double the listening than it is talking. John said, don't marry her. That's not good advice. Yeah, that's not good advice. We shouldn't be doing that. But don't go to bed without resolving your differences. That's an interesting one. That could come from the scripture of don't let the sun go down on your wrath, or don't let the sun go down on your anger. We'll talk about that as the session goes on. And if I, well, yeah, we will talk about that. And what I would say on that is that it's not so much talking about don't let the sun go down on your argument. You don't have to resolve all your arguments before you go to bed. It's that you have to don't go to bed without being friends. Connect as husband and wife first before you go to bed. You don't have to solve your arguments before you go to bed. You just have to be friends before you go to bed. You can solve your arguments tomorrow. So always have the last word. Yes, dear. Good one. That's also good. That's not good advice. Or are you saying that's good advice, Richard? Or are you saying that's bad advice? I can't work out whether you're saying that's good or bad. That's good. Nick Vernon says it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. That is awesome. It takes two wholes to make a good marriage. God's maths doesn't make sense. So 1 + 1 = 1. So 100 + 100 = 100. 100% of me, 100% of her gets to be 100% married, perfect marriage. But there's no such thing as a perfect marriage, and we'll talk about that in a little while as well. Don't provoke your wife to anger. You don't want to poke your wife. Or provoke your wife. Poke or provoke, you don't want to do either. Can two walk together unless they agree? Well, that's a very good one too. Sometimes you can agree to disagree. The most important thing, like I said about letting the sun go down, is the most important thing is to be friends, to connect as husband and wife, and then talk about your differences as you go through. But yes, walk together, definitely hand in hand would always be preferable. And marry a friend, that's a good one. I love that one. It's always good to marry a friend. So you've got some great advice there on what to do, what not to do, some good advice, some not so good advice. Are you going to give that same advice over to your friends, your children, your son, your daughter, when they get married? Would you change the advice in any way? Well, hopefully today you pick up some tips and see how we can give some better advice or different advice in your marriages. So here's some scriptures to start with. Okay, these are some good relationship scriptures for us to be aware of. Okay, here in Romans 12:10, this is some good advice. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Love each other in genuine affection. Well, how do I love you in genuine? What's genuine? And even what's affection? How do I do that? Well, we're going to talk about all this stuff. So take delight in honoring each other. How do you honor somebody? What is honoring? How do you take delight in honoring somebody genuinely? It doesn't make sense sometimes in my masculine brain on how to love my wife genuinely and affectionately. What my affection compared to her affection can be totally different, and we can miss each other on our levels of affection. So how do we love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other? Well, one of the clues, one of the tips is in Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9 to 12, and I love this. It's a good marriage scripture. If any of you do weddings, I do hundreds of weddings, and I always use this. It's better to have a partner than to go it alone. You get to share the work, share the wealth, because you're marrying your best friend, right? Okay, that was one of the good pieces of advice that one of you put up. And if one falls down, the other helps. But if there's no one to help, that's hard. That's tough. Two in a bed, we like this one, don't we, men? Two in a bed warm each other all night. But alone, you shiver all night. By yourself, you're unprotected. But with a friend, you can face the worst. And the Bible asks us a question. God's asking us a question. That in our marriage, in our my 100 plus her 100, my 100% plus her 100%, can we round up another 100%? Can we put God right there in the center? And can you round up a third? A three-stranded rope isn't easily snapped. I love that last part because it's actually the imagery of the Trinity. You get different imagery when you think about doctrine and theology, that you get told different imagery of what the Trinity is. And I'm sure you've all heard of like the imagery of ice, water, steam, or the egg, the shell, the yolk, the white, or the apple, the skin, the flesh, the seed. You get these different imagery of what the Trinity is. But the unfortunate challenge with those images is that you have to, one has to fail in order for the other one to succeed. You have to break through the skin to get to the flesh, or you have to eat all the flesh to see the seed, or you have to crack the egg to get to the yolk. You definitely can't get to the yolk without breaking the white. So something has to fail in order for the other one to succeed. Even the ice, water, steam. Yes, it's ice, water, steam, but one can't exist without the other. Sorry, one has to fail in order for the other to exist. You can't have steam and water at the same time. You have to boil it. You can't have the boiling water and the ice water at the same time. So the great thing about this imagery is that marriage, husband, a whole husband and a whole wife and a whole Jesus right there in the center. That's the perfect imagery of marriage. Jürgen Moltmann is his name. He's a German theologian, Jürgen Moltmann, Jürgen with a J. You can Google him later, but he has a great thesis on the marriage trinity, which is husband as a whole, wife as a whole, and the Holy Spirit, or God, the threefolded cord. That's the marriage trinity. So I think that's perfect. If you can, whatever your relationships are like, if you can bring 100% of yourself and they bring 100% of themselves, and with God right there in the center, you can be well on your way to mastering your marriage. So here's some 3 tips, 3 mastering your marriage tips, okay? And we're going to go in depth. There's some psychology in here. So I hope that you like some psychology. There's definitely some theology in there, but I hope to tease your brain a little bit here. What is it, 8 o'clock at night there at the moment? Well, first tip is understand your partner's internal world. How do I get to be the best husband, to be the best boyfriend, to be the best engaged person, even to be the best employee, even to be the best dad? Understand the other person's internal world. We'll talk about that. Number 2 is turn towards each other instead of away. It's so easy for us to be able to turn away when we get upset, when we get concerned, when we get frustrated, when we don't understand, we turn away. But I'm saying to you, to be a master of your marriage, to be the master of your relationship, the key thing is, one of the key things is to turn towards each other instead of turning away. Have the ability, have the tools, which we'll talk about. Number 3 is understand flooding. Flooding is a psychological event that everybody goes through. No one is immune to flooding. But number 1, okay, let's look at understand your partner's internal world. What is knowing your partner's internal world? Well, your partner's internal world is the thing that you fell in love with when you first started dating. It's a process in marriage, or a process in relationships, called limerence. Limerence is that early stage of the relationship where you will do anything for the other person. John Sweeney, I believe that you drove to the other side of the city, whichever city you were in at the time when you were dating, and you would buy your wife's or your girlfriend's at the time favorite ice cream, but just because she hinted that she might like a special flavor from that special shop, and nothing was too much. Richard Vernon, I know that you would do anything. You would bend over backwards to make sure that you gave your wife, fiance, girlfriend at the time, anything she wanted because she hinted at something that she might like. And that's limerence. It's the above and beyond. It's the desire to go deeper. It's the interest in something that's outside of your normal world. It's the long midnight conversations. It's the discussion about dreams and visions and goals and aspirations. And we all did it when we started dating. And that's limerence. But what happens in relationship, limerence only has a shelf life. Understand this, okay? Limerence only has a shelf life of about 6 to 12 months. Wow, 6 to 12 months is limerence. So limerence fades. Limerence dies off. Richard said, I would do now, but the back won't allow me to. Have you got a bad back, Richard? I don't know. You have to tell me about that later. So that's limerence. It only has a shelf life of about 6 to 12 months. So you can see that it fades, it dies down, it gets less and less as the relationship goes on. So we actually need to work hard at knowing your partner's internal world regularly, because left to its own devices, it's like the law of entropy. Left to its own devices, it will shiver and fade. It won't last. So you need to work on it. So asking your partner questions. How is your day? How can I help you? Here's 2 questions that you can ask your wife regularly every day, and you will be a master in your marriage. First question is, how can I love you more today? You're not a mind reader. You can't read her mind. So ask her the question. She would love it if you asked her the question, how can I love you more today? Second question is, how can I help you more today? How can I help you more today? Would be a great question for you to ask your wife. And you can be able to know your partner's internal world when she gives you those answers. The challenge with it, though, then, is that it changes regularly. What your partner wanted the first day and what your partner wanted the next day can be 2 different things. You know, what turned her on the first night is not going to turn her on the next night. There's no cookie cutter relationship. There's no ABC of mastering your marriage. It changes regularly. So that's why it's so important for you to keep limerence up, to keep limerence going. Know your partner's internal world regularly. This is a great quote by John Gottman. John Gottman wrote a book called 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And me and Julie have been blessed to done a lot of research and study with John and Julie Gottman. They've done over 45 years of research, and this is one of their quotes when it comes to understanding your partner's internal world. If you don't really know someone, how can you truly love them? And what we do in marriage sometimes is we don't turn on love. We don't ask the deeper question. We stop limerence and we fade away, and we ask ourselves the question, how did we get to this stage? How did we fall out of love? Well, it's because we didn't ask the deeper question. We didn't regularly engage with our spouse, with our loved one, with our boss, with our employee, whoever this is applicable to you. So here's some scriptures to help you understand what God says about this. If I can click on it, there we go. Matthew 10. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. God knows you. He knows you. He knows every hair of your head. He knows every hair of your head. He counts them one by one. Now, as we get older, we get less and less hairs on our head, but he knew how many you started, and he knows how many you've got now. He knows how many you had at the beginning, and he knows how many that fell out. He knows how many are gray, and he knows how many are normal. He knows how many are curly, and he knows how many are straight. He knows every hair on your head. And if God can pay that much attention on every hair of my head, I, in this 3-stranded cord, should pay that much attention on every need my wife has, on every desire my wife has. If God's leaning into me in his third of the relationship, I should lean into my spouse in my third, and together we make that whole. Okay? Psalm 139. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Isn't it great that God knows you? He knows you so much. And my point here is that if he knows us this much, then we should desire to know our spouse, our wife, our partner this much. The beginning of wisdom is this. This is for all the men that don't understand yet of what we're sort of talking about. The beginning of wisdom is this. It's just simple. Get wisdom. It's just get it. Just you turn on wisdom that will cost you all you have. Get understanding. You know what is right and you know what is wrong. You know what you should do and what you shouldn't do. We know when we should say yes and when we shouldn't say no. We know what we could do in our relationships, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes we turn away. And that leads me to my next one. Turning towards each other instead of turning away. What's that? What's turning towards each other instead of turning away? Well, every relationship, there are what we call bids for attention. There are bids for attention, bids for affection, bids for humor, bids for support. What's a bid? Well, a bid is this. A bid is something where I'm just asking for a little bit more attention. So in this research that John and Julie Gottman did, they had this little B&B, or a little room in their laboratory that looked out over a lake. And it was a beautiful lake. And they asked couples, over 3,000 couples, to go to this laboratory. And they said to the couples, just come and sit in this B&B and we want to do some research on you. And what they found was these top 3 things, and bids was one of them. Know your partner's internal world, turn towards each other, and understand flooding were the 3 top things that they discovered from all this research they did with all these couples. Now, bids was this. Bids was there was a big window in this room, and they wired these couples up. They put a chest harness on them. They put they did a blood test. They did urine tests. They had cameras in the walls. They had microphones around them. They researched these couples, and what they learned from all this research with all these couples that were willing and wanting to do this research, I got to add, is that one of the major things in any relationship is we are bidding for each other's attention all the time. You are subliminally bidding to be needed in your relationship. And it will sound something like this. In this bed and breakfast, there was a story of a girl that looked out the window and her husband was sitting watching or reading the paper. And she looked out the window and she said, "Oh, look at that boat." Well, that's a bid. That's a bid. That's a bid. She's bidding for her husband's attention, affection, or humor or support. Now, in that moment, he's got a choice. Does he turn towards or does he turn away? Well, what he did was he had his newspaper and he flipped down the corner and he goes, "Oh, wow, yeah, look at that boat." And he carried on reading the newspaper. That's all it was. But in that moment, she reached out to him and he responded to her bid. Every moment of every day, that's what we do. The goal is not to be 100% in returning your wife's bids. The goal is to actually only achieve about 83%. If you can achieve about 83% of your wife's bids, you are a master of marriage. But the problem is we miss bids. Often we miss bids because that picture could have looked like this. It could have looked like, "Hey, honey, look at that boat." And he could have just missed it and carried on reading the newspaper. And that would have effectively been a turning away. She would have gone, "Oh, he doesn't pay attention to me. He's not listening to me. He doesn't care about the boats. Actually, I don't care about the boats. I was just trying to connect with my husband." So you see the difference, turning towards or turning away. The goal is not to get 100%. The goal is to only get about 83%. If you can get 83% of your wife's bids, then you're a master of marriage. So turning away versus turning towards. The benefits of turning towards your wife are exponential. This leads us back to the first point, which is, understanding your partner's internal world. If you can turn towards her, you get to understand her more. If you start saying, if you start leaning into her requests a little bit more, if you can close that man drawer that's going on in your brain and open up wife drawer that's in that brain, then you turn towards your wife a whole lot more. You connect with her bids. What it could also look like is us against the world. Us against the world is this methodology, is this understanding, it's team. We are in this together, me and my wife, we, us against the world. And it might sound selfish, I understand that, but go with me for 1 second. Us against the world is this idea that we are better together. We, us, against the world. Maybe you might come home from a bad day at work. I'm just painting a picture for you. If any of you work with Richard and he's your boss, maybe this is true for you. Are you coming home from a bad day at work and Richard, your boss, has just sledged you for something? He's just gone at you for not doing a report or not turning up on time, or, you know, he's upset you. And I'm only picking on him because I know him so well. But you could come home to your wife and you could say to your wife, oh, I've had a bad day. Richard just, you know, dragged me through the coals for not doing that report. And what could typically happen is your wife says something like, well, you should have done it. You're so lazy. Why didn't you do it? You should have done it. You knew you had to do it. You just didn't do it. He's right. Richard's right. I'm on Richard's side. Richard's right for calling you out. Richard should have done even more. No comments, please. Richard should have done more. He should have told you off even more. That's not us against the world. What us against the world sounds like, it sounds like this. You come home from a bad day, Richard's just sledged you for whatever you've done wrong, and you share that with your wife, and your wife turns to you and she says, instead of being against you, she's for you. She turns towards you and she says something like, oh, that must be so bad. That must really be sad. How dare Richard? Does he not know who you are? You're my husband. You're amazing. You're phenomenal. He has no idea of your potential. He's not building into you. It's, again, I understand it sounds selfish. The point is, turn towards each other, connect before you start going deeper into the problems. Because the reality is, you should have done the report. Richard was right. You should have done it, and it should have been in on time. There was something wrong with you that you didn't do it. But that's not what we're focusing on. What we're focusing on in the marriage is we're focusing on turning towards each other. So when your wife comes home from a bad day at work and she says, my boss just nailed me for doing something bad, then you can turn towards her. And how dare your boss say that to you? Does your boss not know who you are? You're amazing. You're awesome. You're my wife. That connects you. That builds the limerence up again. That knowing your internal world connects you, turn towards each other. And the last one there is small things often. Do it often. Every chance you get, if you see a bid, connect with it. Again, you're not going for 100%, you're going for about 83%. But if you see a bid, your wife bidding for your attention, please connect with it. This will help you be a master of marriage. So I haven't seen any questions come in or any other thoughts other than sledging Richard, which you freely do, but feel free to write in your questions as they come in. So what have we got so far? We've got turning towards, understanding your partner's internal world. We've got turning towards, and here's some scriptures for in knowing your partner's turning towards your partner. Matthew 7, verse 12, it says, here is a simple rule of thumb. Guard your behavior. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. Even more important when it comes to your wife, it's simple. A rule of thumb is guard your behavior. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, what you want your wife to do for you, and then grab the initiative and go above and beyond, respond to that bid and do it for her. In Romans 12:15, it says, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. Turn towards your wife and rejoice with her when she's happy, and even be sad with her when she's sad. Don't try to fix the problem. It's not your problem to fix. She's quite intelligent and she knows the answers. She just needs you to be happy when she's happy and sad when she's sad. Join with her. Connect with those bids. I hope this is all making sense for you. Thumbs up if you're loving it. Thumbs down. Oh, I don't care. All right. Next one is flooding. Everybody do this with your hand. Put your hand up like this. Okay. Imagine this is your brain. And there's a doctor. You can put your hands down now, but because you can see on the screen. But there's a doctor called Dr. Segal, S-E-G-A-L. You can Google him later. Dr. Segal. And he's a clinical psychologist. And he's made the brain easy to understand in putting the brain into the palm of your hand. Now, why this is important is because everybody floods. Everybody floods. We all flood. So what's flooding? Flooding is when our emotions get the better of us and we start saying things, doing things, acting ways that we're not proud of. We start responding in a way that's not normal. We start saying things that are inappropriate and not right. And we do this with everyone, with our boss, with our child, with our wife, with whoever. So whatever relationship you're thinking of now, we do this with them. Flooding is this idea of, this is my brain. So put your thumb inside your hand, fold down your hand, and this is the frontal lobe. This is the front part of my brain. This is where 1 + 1 = 2. Everything makes sense right here. Okay. Hopefully me talking, you are listening, and everything makes sense because you're thinking from your frontal lobe. 1 + 1 = 2. It makes sense, right? That's where your wise thinking comes from. Okay. But what happens when your wife comes in to the room and you can just see on her face that something's not right, or you can hear in her tone that something's not right, or you can hear what the loudness of the cup going down on the counter or the heaviness of the door being closed. You can just hear that something's not right. There's something that happens inside of you that makes you flood. And what that does is it flips your lid. Logic disappears. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 anymore. 1 + 1 now equals giraffe, because it stopped making sense. You flooded all of your emotions, all of your thoughts, all of your feelings, all of your responses, all of your thoughts, all your feelings, all of your responses, they've changed because you've flooded. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 anymore. Inside here is a little part of your brain called the amygdala. Now I'm getting a little bit serious now because it's very important for us all to understand. This tiny, tiny part of your brain controls all of your fear, fight, and flight responses. This is where your thoughts can just go wild and you start doing things and acting things that you're not proud of. Have you ever had an argument with your wife? Yes, we all have arguments with our wives. And at the end of the argument, you've gone, maybe 20 minutes or 4 hours, a few hours later, you've gone, why did I say that? That just made matters worse. Or I wish I never did that. There was an argument I had with my wife and I had my hand up against the door saying, "You're not leaving." And she was like, "Yes, I am." I'm like, "No, you're not. We need to solve this. We need to fix this problem." Is that just me, or is that everyone had arguments like that? But we all have disagreements. And what I did was I flooded. Logic disappeared. And I started acting from my fear. I started acting up from my flight, freeze, or fold responses. All of those responses are put in there from when you're a child, when you're an adolescent. And that's how we respond when we get flooded. We respond in a very immature way, because it's not normal. You don't normally act like that. You don't normally say things like that. You don't normally swear or make things up or lie to get yourself out of it. What you normally do is you use wisdom. You use common sense. The problem is you're flooded. So those are the three things that let's move back. Dr. John and Julie Gottman and a stack of other researchers have found. Let's go back to that flooding, that sign there. The first thing is understand your partner's internal world. Second thing is turn towards each other. The third thing is understand flooding. You can control flooding by breathing. Imagine that oxygen is like the fuel for your petrol tank or for your engine. When you feel that flooding and you feel that sense, oh, she's just slammed the door, or she's just pushed that cup down a little bit louder than normal, or I can hear in her tone things are not right. Before you respond, before you flood, before you flip your lid, before you say something you're about to regret, just please take at least 10 minutes just to breathe. Deep breathing sounds stupid, but it's the wisest thing you can do. Get some oxygen into your brain so that you can actually turn towards your partner instead of turning away. And you can actually understand your partner instead of misunderstanding. All right. Any thoughts, observations, challenges, questions on those three things? That if we just left it at those three things, you potentially have the tips that you need to become the master of marriage. But I don't want to stop there. How much longer have I got until it's 6 o'clock here my time? So I've got another 30 minutes, right?
Half an hour, Terry, yeah.
Perfect. All right, any questions on that? No? Awesome. Awesome. All right. So what we want to talk about is sex, finances, and parenting. Sex and intimacy, finances, and parenting. They're the top three things. I'll get to that question in a minute. John says the flooding usually happens when you yourself have had a bad day, absolutely, and argue at work or on the way home, absolutely. The best thing to do is if you've had a bad day at work is take time in the car on the way home to breathe. Do that breathing before you walk into the house so that you are the 100% husband that you need to be. She's not getting the second hand you, she's getting the best you. So make sure you don't give your best to your employment. Don't give your best to your job. Give your best to your spouse by breathing before you turn up into your house. Absolutely. That totally makes sense. Well, I'm concerned that if I click on different things here, you see the comments that are going up as well. I don't know if you do. There's another one. Oh, Chris says good evening. Good evening, Chris. It's good to see you. All right. So sex and intimacy, finances, and parenting are the top three reasons why people write in their divorce papers for the reason that they want to separate. They want a divorce. What that means is that it's not an affair that is the reason why they're wanting to separate. It's not an external thing that has caused them to want to separate. That's further down the level. That's maybe number, I think it was actually number 5 or 6. That's not the top 3 reasons why people want to separate. People want to separate is because they can't see a way out. They think this is my lot. This is what I have to put up with. And I'd rather separate than put up with this type of conversations around sex and intimacy, or this type of disagreement around finances, or this type of inability to parent our children at the same level. So people get frustrated at those three levels. It's not because of something external. That's not the top reason. It's because of those three things. So here's sex and intimacy. Sex and intimacy. Okay. This is one of the most vulnerable topics you, as a man, will ever have to talk to your wife about. This is an embarrassing topic. This is a vulnerable topic. This is a topic where we just want our wife to be a mind reader, so we don't have to share anything. We want our wives just to understand me, and we want our wives just to respond to me in a sexual, intimate way without me having to say anything. And as a husband, I am a husband, many husbands there, many husbands, we get frustrated in our own brain, in our own internal world, because my wife, I can't verbalize what I want to say, and my wife's not doing what I want her to do, or respond the way I want her to respond, or say what I want her to say. And there's that disconnect. It's because we don't know each other's internal world. It's because we don't turn towards each other. And it's because we don't fully control our flooding. So imagine that when it comes to sex and intimacy, those three things to make you a master of your marriage, if you could bring that into the topic of sex and intimacy, you know that you're going to set yourself up for a win. If you can understand your wife a little bit more, if you can turn towards your wife a little bit more when it comes to sex and intimacy, if you can not flood when the topic of sex and intimacy comes up, you could be on your way to being your master of marriage. So there was a book I highly recommend you, if you like reading and you like science and you like research, this book called The Normal Bar. Like, what is normal? Because it was a study, years of professional study. It was an online study conducted over 70,000 people in 24 countries. So people across the whole world, and they were working out what was good and what was not good about sex and intimacy within marriage. And the research shows 70,000 people, over 24 couples, there's some clear do's and don'ts when it comes to your wife with sex and intimacy. Would you like to know them? The things you should do and the things you should not do. Okay, again, I'm going to send this to you. There's a lot of information coming up. John, you can email it on to anyone that you want to within this chat. But couples, this is fact from the research, that couples have bad sex life everywhere on the planet. Is the top 6 things that they found. What couples do bad. Okay, they spend very little time together during a typical week. They become job-centered, and the wife becomes child-centered. This is couples, not just husbands or wives. They talk mostly about their huge to-do lists. I just call it, I've got to do, just got to list. They talk mostly about their list than they do about anything else. They seem to make everything else a priority other than their relationship. So they drift apart and lead parallel lives. This is the clear. Limerence has gone. It's disappeared. No longer will I drive to the other side of the city to get your favorite gelato, but I will selfishly be myself. I will, I'll sit on my own device watching my own TV, and I won't really worry about what you're up to. So are unintentional about turning towards one another, meaning I'm not responding to their bids anymore. I can hear it, I feel it, but I'm turning away. I'm intentionally or unintentionally not turning towards. So there's a lot of information there, and I'm not saying that you or me or any one of us are those particular things, but I'm sure that you resonate with at least one of those things. There's 6 things there that couples all over the world are doing bad when it comes to their sex life? And that's not Terry Scott. That's 70,000 people asked questions, 24 countries. So what's the one thing that you think you can improve on? Why don't you identify it right now? Why don't you write it down on your notepad? Just 1, 2, 3, or 4. Maybe, John, you can have an accountability group with your men in this little chat. Maybe you can talk about those 6 things, and maybe you can pray over each other, lay hands on each other when you're COVID friendly, and you can actually meet together again. But maybe you can identify those things in a very private, confidential way, and you can talk about one of the things that you could do better. Could you spend a little more time with each other during a week? Could you become a little less job-centered and a little bit more wife-centered? Obviously, the wife has her part to play, that she needs to stop being so child-centered and more husband-centered. But could you talk more about each other than rather your huge to-do list? Could you stop making everything else a priority and start making your relationship a priority? Could you start living a singular life instead of a paralleled life? Could you start turning towards each other a little bit more instead of turning away from each other? Now, you know, I can see it on your faces. There's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of those things. And I think if we are honest, there's more than one things that I could improve right now. I could take those 3 tips on mastering my marriage and I can implement them in this sex conversation that will join us together. So what are the things that, I focused a lot on the bad. Well, let's focus on the good. Okay. I'm concerned I don't want to lose. Howard saying more time. We've just had a lockdown for 3 months. Yes. Look, the great thing, I don't know what it's like in England there, but in Australia, what we've found is that relationships are either getting a whole lot better or they're getting a whole lot worse. They're either getting awesome or they're getting awful. What me and my wife are purposely trying to do is be preemptive and teach people this type of stuff before the problems come. So there will either be, this is what the government has told us, there'll either be more separations and divorce, or there'll be more children when we come out of a lockdown. Maybe Richard, you could go again, have another child. Maybe John, maybe you got another one in you somewhere. Or is your quiver full? Have you had I'll leave it at that. All right. What are the things? Actually, there's 13. So there's 6 bad things in a sex life and there's 13 good things you could do. Okay, you ready for those? All right, here we go. Hang on, there's another chat coming in. Good, Peter's still happily married after 49 years. That is awesome, Peter. Keep it up, well done. Have you still got limerence? Will you still drive to the other side of the city for your wife? Are you turning towards her, Peter? Richard's opting out and he's going for a bigger TV. Richard, that's not the answer, mate. You know, opt in. Don't get a bigger TV. Don't have no TV and talk to your wife. I love her. She's doing a great job. She's a great worship leader, by the way. I've listened in to your services online and she's great. I don't know her personally. I think I've only met her once, but she's great. All right, here we go. Bad things. Here are some good things. So couples who have had a great sex life everywhere on the planet are doing the same set of things. What are they doing? Well, what they're doing is they say, I love you every day, and they mean it. They say, I love you every day, and they mean it. They kiss one another passionately for no reason. The research shown that if you can give each other a 6-second kiss, 6-second kiss, it's quite a long time. If we were to count 6 right now, that's a reasonable amount of time. But a 6-second kiss, I call it a kiss with potential. 6-second kiss, but try to kiss her with no other alternative. Because I guarantee you, man, what she's thinking is he's kissing me this long because he wants something. But try to kiss her without any agenda. Be passionate with her without any agenda. Just kiss her because you love to kiss her. Give them a surprise romantic gift. Doesn't need to be expensive, but a thoughtful romantic gift. It's better to give your wife 1 red rose with a love note than it is 20 red roses. Did you know that? She will much prefer 1 red rose with a love letter than 20 red roses without the romantic thought. Okay? You know what turns the partner on and off erotically, sexually. You just know it. I know my partner's internal world. Remember, understand your partner's internal world. Well, ask them some sex questions. What turns you on? What can I do more? What can I do less? What do you like? What do you not like? What's winning? What's failing? Ask her. Get a little bit more. Oh, sorry, they are physical and affectionate, even in public. PDAs, public displays of affection. Even in public, ask her, can I have a hug? Can I hold hands? Can we have a kiss? Quick one, don't be weird, not that much in public, but enough. All this means is she just wants to know that you are proud of her. Will you kiss me in public? Will you hug me in public? Will you hold my hand in public? Will you sit next to me in church with your hand on my knee in public? This is what people, when they have a great sex life, this is what people are doing across the whole world. They keep playing and having fun. This all comes into that point number 1, which was know your partner's internal world. Limerence has not disappeared and they are playing and having fun. Do you have fun with your spouse? When's the last time you skipped through the fields, or you did something stupid, or you danced for no reason, or you played a game and just had fun between the 2 of you without the kids? No kids involved. Get your kids babysat by somebody else and just have fun together as husband and wife. What else do? They cuddle. When you're watching a movie, they saddle up next to each other and they're cuddling. They make sex a priority. It's not on the end of a long to-do list. It's planned, it's organized. You actually will become a better husband when sex is a priority and it's planned. There's nothing wrong in planning it. If it's left to spontaneity, potentially it will never happen. So if you plan it, if you organize it, if you make a run sheet of what you want to do on that night. I'm being a little bit over the top, but there's nothing wrong in organizing it and planning it. Talk to your wife about the do's and don'ts and make a plan for intimacy. Me and my wife, we have a date night every Friday night, non-negotiable. Has been that time for as long as I can remember. Maybe it was a Wednesday night for a period of time, but now it's a Friday night and it's non-negotiable. Even when Sunday church visits Friday night, we don't not have date night. We just change date night to another night because date night is a big priority. So I know that I'm a better husband when date night is coming. I know that I want to look after my wife Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because Friday is on its way, because it's planned, it's organized. We don't have big glamorous date nights. We have picnics on the lounge room floor with a cheap tin of baked beans or tuna. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is, but are you connecting? Are you making a plan? Is it your priority? Have you talked about making love that night? Okay, you stay good friends. Again, similar to what we talk about. Number 10, they can talk comfortably about their sex life. This one's a passionate one of mine, and I could talk about this one forever, but do you have healthy conversations about your sex life? I bet you have healthy conversations about what you want for dinner, or what's your favorite restaurant, or, you know, that Liverpool are not the best team in the world. But can you have a healthy relationship about your sex life? Is it at the same level? Remember, I talked about the vulnerability of sex and intimacy. Can this is the most vulnerable conversation you're ever going to have. We'll talk about it. Can you have a healthy sex life talking about it? You know, instead of saying things like, I want chips and gravy tonight for dinner, can you say, I want a bit of foreplay and a bit of this and a bit of that? Is that the level of your conversation? Are you both on the same page when it comes to that? Can you have that vulnerable conversation? Just pausing for dramatic effect on that one, because there's a challenge, right? Trying to get that conversation to be less awkward and more open. Get comfortable in talking about sex with your wife. Okay. You have weekly dates, which I just talked about, and they take romantic vacations. Again, not with the kids, not with your best mates, not down the pub doing what you love to do with your friends, but a weekly date and a romantic getaway between the two of you. And they are mindful about turning towards each other. You're mindful about turning towards each other. Okay. So what's the goals? The antidotes. The antidotes for this not being one of your top reasons for separation is this. Well, the task is to enhance emotional and physical intimacy and make sex a priority. That's your task. That's your antidote. If you can do that, you'll be a master in your marriage. How do we do that? What's the solution? Well, after all of that study, after all of that research, here's the solution. Learn to talk to each other about sex in a way that lets each partner feel safe. Be open, be honest, be vulnerable. Talk to each other about sex. And this will enhance the experience for both of you. I promise you, if you can get more vulnerable in your conversation, it will get better between the sheets. Do you have any thoughts before I move on to the next one? Do you have any thoughts on that? Questions? I'm even keen for you to unmute. Talk to me. Let's have a conversation. Hey, Terry, it feels so good to talk at the 13. I can't remember what that says. Oh, it's privately. I won't read it out. I need to make sure that I read private notes and not public notes, or read public notes and not private notes. All right, unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself, or can I unmute you? John, what can we do?
I think they can unmute themselves, yeah.
All right, so if you unmute yourself, ask me a question. What's your thoughts?
I've got a question.
Yes, John.
So what advice would you give a guy, say, who's struggling with sexual temptation, either, you know, while single or while they're dating, if they're engaged or whatever, or even if they're married, you know, they're thinking about having a fling or an affair, or what advice would you give there?
So look, it's an interesting question, and I deal a lot with men who have that sort of challenge that are going on. One thing that we try to get to quite quickly in that conversation is, are they wanting the affair because, or are they wanting that sexual temptation, pornography, or, you know, emotional affair, you know, a chat room, or a Facebook connection, or even searching for old girlfriends online, or, you know, those types of things where my mind starts wandering and going somewhere else sexually and intimately. Why is that person wanting to do that? Are they wanting to do that because they're in a vulnerable spot in their own life and they need to have a a fix to fill a void? Is there a void in their own life? Now I'm talking about their marriage right now, but is there a void in their own life and they're trying to fill it, trying to numb the pain? Are they trying to cover up a little bit of whatever's going on? What's going on? They could potentially have a bad day or bad week, months at work, or a friendship might be failing in some way, or there might be some emotional problems going on with some past trauma, or they might be diagnosed with something that are, clinical. There might be something other than the marriage failing that is causing them a problem, and they need to fill that void in their life, that problem in their life. So what they do, instead of turning towards their wife, they turn towards a quick, simple fix that can mask the pain and give them a quick feeling of euphoric nature, so they feel good when they are turned on sexually through that conversation, or through that pornography site, or through that video that they've watched, or through the desire to find that ex-girlfriend on Facebook or Instagram. Whatever it is, it's not necessarily a problem in the marriage why people are choosing that alternate sexual behavior. And it's very important that we work out the reason why. Because I promise you, if you can work out the reason why, then typically you can solve the problem of the additional sexual behavior. If you can fix the void, then they don't need to fill it with that additional behavior. If you can fix the problem, if you can reconcile with that friend, if you can, get counseling for that emotional problem, if you can have that conversation that you have been putting off for a very long time and it's causing you some strain, if you can do that, then you won't turn towards the sexual behavior that's going to make you feel better. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's good. It reminds me of a quote I heard a while ago about something not in the same context, but it would equally apply to this as well, about the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. So it's about doing all that stuff, isn't it? About turning towards and not away, and all that. So
absolutely.
Very good. Very good.
What we know, what we absolutely know, what I know, what is proven, what we teach here at Hillsong, and what we've seen evidence of time and time again, is that if couples, if husbands particularly, can do those three things in their relationship, it is less likely for them to get involved in pornography, get involved in those types of behaviors. It's less likely for them to search for additional relationships, whether emotional or physical affairs, if they can get back to limerence. The reason why you fell in love in the first place, that's what you decided to spend the rest of your life with. There was no other need for anything else in those stages. If you can get back to that, there's no reason for anything else. So let's solve some of those problems that were going on outside of our marriage emotionally, and then you wouldn't need to struggle with those internal challenges. Anyone else? Any questions on this? There is a lot of information there.
I totally.
Hey, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, I totally agree with what John Sweeney's just said. I mean, as you know, I'm 3 times divorced, and the first time I got divorced was because I thought the grass was greener. Instead of working on marriage, I left home.
Right. Wow.
The second 2 times, it rebounded on me. So yes, I totally agree with what John said.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what you would have found is that those top 3 points there resonate with you. If there could have been on both sides, if there could have been a little bit more turning towards each other, if there could have been a little bit more understanding your partner's internal world, if you could have prevented yourselves from flooding and getting emotional and carried away in that argument, you could have potentially, like I'm no doctor or scientist, and I haven't got a crystal ball that can look into your life or past, but what I do know is it has the potential to make your marriages better if you do those three things more often.
My first wife and my second wife, we worked together 24 hours a day, so it was very difficult, and that does create problems. With Republicans, that was the thing.
Oh, yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but look, this might sound harsh, John. You look like a really nice guy, and I don't want to offend anyone in the room, but I would say your wife is more important than your job. Now, I know there's going to be a conversation about that, and I know there's, you know, more stuff that comes out of that statement, but the reality is it's God first, and then me. I've got to be the best me I can be, so that I can be the best husband, so that we can be the best marriage, so that we can have the best family, so that we can do everything else really well. The great thing about God is he doesn't look at the peripherals. He looks at your heart. He doesn't look at the things that I do so much as who I am. And if I can sort out my heart towards my wife, towards my spouse, towards my fiance or girlfriend, or towards whoever this relationship that we're talking about is, if I can get my heart right with God, if I can get my heart right with myself, and then I can get my heart right with her, then I know everything else will look after itself. There's one thing I had to really nail myself, because I was working out, I was working more than spending time with my wife. And before long, I would have lost my wife. So you have to make sure you spend time with your wife more than spending time with your job. And that's one of the things when it comes to sex. And, you know, couples who are doing good, they are, hang on, I can't remember what it was, but they are spending time with each other and not at work. Or it was the bad thing, wasn't it? It was the bad thing that they, you know, respond to their to-do list more than each other. That's right. All right, anyone else want to unmute and chat and talk before we move on? Or are you happy to go to the next one? I don't know whether we'll have time, John. Oh, it's 6:30. We don't have time.
Yeah, I was just looking at the time.
Wow, that's gone really fast.
It has. But, what does everyone else want to do? Do we want to wrap it up now? I think there's a lot of good stuff, Terry, that you've brought. I think it's been, you know, really helpful for me, at least, you know, and I'm sure for lots of other men too. So, do men, what do you want to do? Do you want to wrap it up, or do you want Terry to
have a
carry
question?
on?
There is a question that's come through. It is a private question, but they don't mind me answering the question, if that's all right, John.
Yeah, go for it.
What if there's the question is what if sex is difficult medically for the wife or the husband, but for the wife? What if there is a difference in sex medically? Now, look, that could be a whole other session. What I would say to that answer is, again, this could be a potential controversial answer, and I'll say it, and I'll let Richard pick up the pieces after, or John, is that sex. So, all right, let me say this: intimacy is not intercourse. Intimacy is not intercourse. Be very mindful that intimacy between husband and wife does not have to be intercourse. Intercourse is the goal, right? It's imagine the soccer game. You all love soccer, football. We call it soccer here in Australia, but I'm English, so I still should call it football. It's an 80-minute game. But the goal only takes what? 30 seconds? The celebration, the goal, the kick, the build up, that's intercourse. Intimacy is the game. Intimacy starts in the morning, ends in night, every day. Intimacy starts at the breakfast table. Intimacy actually starts before you get out of bed. Hey, honey, good to see you. Good morning. Connect. Intimacy is, if you break it down like this, are you into me? See? Do you see me? That's intimacy. So it sounds harsh, but think about your wife, and she also has intimacy needs. She might not necessarily need the intercourse, but she needs the intimacy. So as a husband, if there is a medical need with the sexual nature, the intercourse, have you seen a doctor? Have you seen professional help? Have you asked, is the conversation open and honest and wise? Have we explored all the options to try to cure some of those medical challenges? But even in that, you can still be intimate with your wife. There are plenty of things you can do with your whole bodies without intercourse. You've got hands, you've got mouths, you've got the whole body. You can do a lot of different things with your body without intercourse. I'm not going to paint you any pictures or anything like that. But
develop a toe fetish, Terry.
Look, I'm not doing a Fergie. There's no toe sucking going on here. I don't know if you remember that, the toe sucking saga that happened years ago. But no, there's a lot of things you can do without intercourse. One of the questions that it goes on to say, is masturbation wrong? Is masturbation wrong? Masturbation is wrong when it's self-gratification, when it's self-satisfying. Masturbation is wrong when it's all about me. In a marriage, it's not me, it's we. In a marriage, it's not I, it's our. So even masturbation's absolutely fine if it's mutual, if you both agree that it's okay. If it's done in the dark, that's where the enemy is. If you're hiding away to do it, that's where you'll find the enemy. If you find yourself, having to masturbate in quiet, in a little room somewhere by yourself, if you're secretive, if you're hidden away, if something's wrong when you're doing it in private. But masturbation's not wrong if it's done with your wife, if she understands, if you're talking, if you're vulnerable, especially if there's medical needs. Well, there's nothing wrong with masturbation if you're both okay with it. But are you prepared to talk about it? Can you bring it into the light? Bring it into the light is a chord of 3, okay? Remember that chord of 3? 1 + 1 and Jesus. Jesus is the light. If you can bring it into the light, that's where you'll find God. And you'll have a conversation about it. Ask your wife. If you're asking me the question, do I think masturbation is wrong? Well, have a vulnerable conversation with your wife and ask your wife. And if you ask your wife, if you can't ask your wife, then you've got a problem. Because it's in the dark. It needs to be brought into the light. So yes and no. Do I think masturbation is wrong? No, but also yes. It's a very confusing answer.
Terry,
I know.
I think it depends what you're thinking about, doesn't it, as well?
Absolutely. There's a whole idea. There's a whole idea of what's it called? I can't remember the name of it, but there is a clinical name for putting somebody else's face onto your wife while you're being intimate.
Mm.
Again, it goes down to that thought of what are you thinking about? Am I thinking about my wife, or am I thinking about something else to turn me on? Please make sure you remember these conversations are vulnerable, they're scary, they're very, very transparent, and you actually need to open up your heart to have these types of conversations. But this conversation needs to be the same level as, what do you want for dinner tonight? Can you get your sex and intimacy conversation to the same level as, let's have chips and gravy? It's hard. I get it. I understand. It's difficult. But go back to those top 3 tips for mastering your marriage. Understand your partner's internal world. Ask her the question, what does she want? How does she want to be intimate? Have the conversation. Turn towards her instead of turning away from her. And don't flood when the conversation gets too difficult. Okay.
Very good, Terry.
So that's okay. There's what I'll do is I won't talk anymore because I'm concerned about your time.
Well, I think
there's two other topics here that you could talk about, and I'll give you the 2 other topics in these PowerPoint slides. But there is one thing that I'm keen to finish off with, if that's okay.
Well, I think a lot of the men are happy for you to carry on. I think that, I suppose, time-wise, the issue is how long it would take, perhaps.
All right. Well, here, let me do it quickly then. All right.
Okay, cool.
Let me do it very quickly. So the second reason is finances. The third reason is parenting. Okay, finances. So think about finances like this. Again, think of those top 3 tips that we're talking about: knowing your partner's internal world, turning towards your partner, and stop flooding. It's important to reframe your approach towards conflict about money. The argument about money is not the problem. Money doesn't care about where you spend it. Money doesn't care. Money has no feelings. Money has no emotions. Money has no thoughts. Money does not care. Money only cares because you care. You care about your money. So it's important to reframe your approach towards conflict about money. What do you think when it comes to your money? Is it my money or is it our money? Come back to that scripture that we talked about right in the beginning. A cord of 3 is not easily broken. 1 + 1 = 1. My money is not mine. My money is ours. I don't know how you do your bank account. I don't know how you do your finances, but I always talk to a lot of engaged couples and dating couples about having a shared bank account. You can have your own little bank account on the side with, you know, a little bit of spending money if you want, but that's, my wife knows exactly how much money's in there and how much I'm spending. We are transparent, we are open, we have reframed our approach towards money. So happy couples start conflict conversations gently and allow their partner to influence them. When you are thinking about spending that next amount of money, do you allow your partner to influence you on how to spend that money? Remember, don't let money be the problem. Let the conversation be the leader. And they work with each other to compromise and find a solution. You know, it's our money. So we work with each other. You know, these are my needs with finances. These are your needs with finances. This is what I want to spend money on. This is what you want to spend money on. Well, what do? We find a compromise. We find a solution. Because it's not my way. It's not your way. I like to say it's Yahweh's. It's God's ways. If I focus on God's way when it comes to my money, our money, then I know I'm going to be fine. Now, what we say in this moment is it is non-negotiable. If you are in the house, if you are spending time with the Lord, if you attend a church, which you all do, then tithing is a non-negotiable. It is a biblical principle. 10%. My 90% goes further than my 100% ever would. It is a miracle. It is God's financial equation. You know, my 90%, when I give my 10% to God, which I actually don't think of it as giving, it is already his, he gives me 90. He allows me to, he blesses me with a good job. So I get 90% of my salary because 10% is already his, my first fruit. I don't give it secondly. I give it first, before any bill, before any moment. As soon as that bank money hits my bank account, me and my wife, we sit together and we, you know, digitally do it. So we press go and it's sent, but we work with each other to compromise our giving. And tithing is non-negotiable. It's not, you know, it's not even thinking about it. And then you above and beyond that. Okay. So in the last point there, in this way, anger and frustration about money can actually be a catalyst to a profound growth in your marriage. Money, if you use it wisely, if you talk about it sensibly, if you're turning towards each other, if you're understanding your partner, if you can stop arguing about it, if you stop flooding about it, you can actually use the topic of money to make your marriage grow. Money does not have to be the problem. Money can be the solution. It could be a tool to have dreams. It could be a tool to have visions. It can be a tool to have goals. It can be a tool to bring you closer together on what those dreams, visions, and goals are. At the moment, we're thinking about renovating our house, painting the internals of our home. We've got a quote. It's a lot. But we work together to make that goal achievable. And it's a success. It's a success story around our money. When you want to buy a new car, please don't get it on finances. If you've got it on finances, that's okay, but try to cancel that debt as soon as you can. Don't give your money to the banks. There's a whole course that I could talk about on that. But finances, hang on, go back, can draw you closer together. A united dream, a united vision. Habakkuk, can't remember the scripture, but it says, write it down, make it clear. In Habakkuk, write your vision down and make it clear. Do you have a dream when it comes to your finances? Do you have a goal? For the last 25 or 24 years, because on our 25th wedding anniversary, we have a dream to go to Canada. I've wanted to go to Canada for 25 years. I've never been there. But it's our goal, and we've been saving, putting aside, watching that bank account grow and budgeting to get to Canada. So, finances. Next one. How to have constructive conversation when it comes to your finances. Be on the same page. Stop your flooding. Postpone persuasions. Express your needs. And both believe points of view are valid. Okay, be on the same team. Remember, it's us against the world. It's we-ness, not me-ness. It's ours, not yours. Be on the same page. Stop your flooding. Remember, flooding, brain, flip your lid, calm down, breathe. Get some oxygen into that fuel tank in your brain. Postpone your persuasions. Don't try to argue your case. Some of these conversations around money, I hear them often. You've already set your case. You've already built your persuasive argument. You've already convinced yourself it's an essential need that I need this new fishing rod or this new boat or this, you know, it's going to make my life so much better. Well, postpone those persuasive arguments and talk about your money in a calm way. Express your needs, wants, and desires. Now, what would this make for you personally if I was to spend this type of money, if I was to do this thing with this money? Express your needs. Don't be, when I say express your needs, don't be a dictator when it comes to your money. Don't tell the other person, this is what I'm going to do. whether you like it or not. This is my money, I've earned it. Having that position is not turning towards each other. It's not understanding your wife's internal world. And if you're saying things like that, then you're definitely flooded, because you wouldn't normally say that in your normal sense. The last one there is believe both points of view are valid. Both points of view are definitely valid. Your view about your money and her view about your money is very, very important. Your view about her money and her view about money is very important. So both views are valid. Remember, it's not me, it's we. So the antidotes for this is, the task here is to balance the freedom and empowerment money presents with the security and trust it also symbolizes. So balance the freedom and empowerment money represents with the security and trust it also symbolizes. Do you believe that? That money actually shows us that we trust each other. It shows us that we're safe. Money has the power to build up and the power to let you down quite quickly. But remember, money doesn't care. It's your attitude towards money that cares. So the solution is some clear-headed, unbiased budgeting. And I put up there a little image called Dave Ramsey. I don't know whether you've heard of Dave Ramsey, but I would highly recommend you jump into Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University course. Just Google Dave Ramsey and you'll get to the Financial Peace University course. It will teach you how to budget. Okay, sex is a big topic, I get that. Finance is a big topic, but the next big topic, and this is massive, is parenting. Okay, I'm definitely not going to be, I'm looking at the time and I'm definitely not going to be able to go through all of this, but I want to talk about one particular area. There's 4 types of parenting, okay? And the most beneficial type of parenting is what you call emotional coaching. It says here, raising an emotional, intelligent child. We, as husband and as wife, we have to be on the same page to raise an emotionally intelligent child. It is more important. Researchers have found that even more than IQ, more than your intelligence quotient, it's more important to have an emotional quotient, an EQ, an emotional awareness. So you've heard that, I'm sure you've heard of your EQ, the ability to handle freely, and the ability to handle feelings and determine your success and happiness in all walks of life. So it's more important for you to be an emotional aware than it is to be intellectually aware. Intellectual is good, but emotional is better. Okay, for parents, this quality of emotional intelligence means being aware of your child's feelings and being able to empathize, soothe, and guide them. You know, being a parent is not being a dictator. Being a parent is more about being a coach. We help our child to get to solutions. We help our child find the right pathways. We help our child with their grievances with themselves or with others. We empathize with them, soothe them, calm them as parents do, but we also give them wisdom and guide them. We don't tell them all the time what to do, even though we do tell them when they're in danger. But the topics that are not going to cause danger or not going to cause an emergency or not going to cause threat, you know, those topics, like who should I be friends with? What course should I do in college? You know, what car should I buy? Or, you know, what toy should I ask for Christmas? That's a guiding conversation rather than a dictatorial conversation. Okay, and when it comes to raising children, what parental behaviors makes the difference is being an emotional parental behavior or having emotional parental behavior. So so there are 4 types of behaviors. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but they're all here. They are, here they are, the dismissing parent, the disapproving parent, the laissez-faire parent, or what I really want to talk about is this, the emotional coach parent. The emotional coach parent. How many of you have got kids? I don't know how many of you got kids, but maybe you want to have kids, or you've got nieces or nephews, or you're involved in children somewhere in your world. Value the child's negative emotions. You've got to see the world of negative emotions as an important area for parenting. Your child gets scared, your child gets nervous, your child gets upset. Well, as a coach, I get to come alongside my child and help them navigate that world. So emotional coach does not poke fun at your child, and you don't make light of your child's feelings. You don't say how the child should feel. You don't tell them what their behavior should be. You coach them into identifying their behaviors, what they feel, what they should feel, what they can feel, what's right, what's not right, using wisdom and care. So using emotional coaching, using emotional behaviors, sets us up. It's a time for listening to our child, to empathize with soothe words and affection, help the child label their emotion. You know, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel upset. You know, those types of behaviors they're not bad to have those types of feelings. What's bad is when those feelings get out of control. If you let your child get sad and they're continually sad, that's bad. Or if you let your child get angry and they're continually angry, that's bad. But if you have a sad child, that's okay. Just coach them in their emotions and let them understand why they're sad. If they're angry, that's okay. It's a valid emotion. So let them understand why they're angry. Work with them, help them, coach them with their emotions. So the effects of this style on your child, in the last part there, is they learn to trust their feelings. They regulate their own emotions because they know what is right and what's wrong. I can be angry, but I can manage my anger. Or I'm sad and I can manage my sadness. They solve problems quicker because they're more in tune with their emotions. They have a high self-esteem. They learn well. They get along well with others. So in parenting, by research and science, this emotional coaching is the best mentality for a parent. So if you are a parent, if you want to be a parent, if you're involved in children, this is the goal. So the antidotes for this, okay? Expand your sense of we-ness to include your children. Emotional coaching in emotional children, you allow your child to be involved with you. It's us against the world, remember? It's we, it's not me. It's not my way, it's our way, even when it comes to your children. Obviously, when it comes to dangerous behaviors, it is my way, but all the other stuff, you can be we. So what's the solution? How do we do this? Well, we focus on your marital friendship. Remember, the best gift you can give your child is a happy mum and dad. Be happy as a mum and dad. If you can be happy as a mum and dad, your child picks up on that and they, by default, become happy. So if you're going to argue in front of your kids and make up in front of your kids. Let them know everything's good and safe. Don't argue in front of your kids and let them never see you making up. They've got to know it's safe to argue and it's safe to make up. So don't exclude each other from the baby or childcare. It's not one person's job to do all the caring. Dads need to be baby's or child's playmate too. Dads need to look after their children as well. So if you've got a busy day at work, still come home, save the best you've got for your wife, save the best you've got for your child, and carve out time for the two of you, for you as a husband, for you as a wife, but also for you and your child. And be sensitive to each other's needs. You know, what are your child's needs? Go out on a trip, take them to the park, help them ride their bike, teach them how to drive. All of those things. Be sensitive to your child's needs. And I put down there, the last one is give mum a break. However old your child is, please be a good husband and give your wife a break. They don't need to do all the caring, thinking, support for your child. Please don't let your wife be the only one that's thinking about the clothes that need to be washed, or the cleaning that needs to be done, or the bedrooms that need to be tidied, or the ironing that needs to be done for the school clothes. You know, give your wife, give their mum a break. Help them in being good parents. All right, John.
Yeah,
that's everything
good.
I've got for now.
Very good, mate.
Three things you can do to help your marriage. There is, 2 hours of work for you to get through.
Fantastic. So you've got those slides that you presentation you can email to me.
I will email it through to you now.
Brilliant.
And I will share them with them all, and you can get to do whatever you want to do.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Okay.
Well,
I would highly recommend. That's 2 hours of work. That's a long effort. Well done, everyone. You've paid attention for a long amount of time. You need to give each other a clap or whatever it is, or high five or a thumbs up or a well done. You've done a good job. Richard, thanks for letting me be a part of Lakeside, getting involved in the men's ministry here. John Sweeney, thanks so much for the invitation. You know, there's a lot of information there, man. You know, you could split that down and have a sermon every week for the next 6 weeks on each one. Richard, I hope I've given you some ideas.